Hello, Joy Fuelers. It's Becky here, and I'm with my dear friend Pearl Schechter in her lovely home in Chapel Hill. Pearl, I've invited Pearl to our Joy Fuel conversation and want to share with you a little bit about Pearl and how she and I met. And Pearl has some things that we're just going to have a conversation about joy. Pearl and I have known each other for about a year and a half. And it was an absolute, I think it was destiny that brought us together, because I saw Pearl on a plane. She was going ahead of me to get on a plane. And when I saw her, I thought, wow, I'd love to sit next to her. I bet she'd be a really interesting person to sit next to. Well, it wasn't meant to be on that flight, but when we were coming back from our destinations, coming back to Raleigh-Durham, Pearl got rerouted and ended up not only being on the same plane with me, but sat in the only empty seat that was on the plane next to me. And when she walked in, I realized that Pearl was the lady that I wanted to sit on the plane next to on the plane out. And then we met, and Pearl, when you sat down, it was great to meet you.
Talking about joy, it's a joy to meet someone like Becky. She makes me feel that I must never look at the pessimistic side, which I usually don't. When I was a little girl, I remember my mother always used to say, Pearl is happy. If the thing won't happen that's coming, she's already had her happiness. For example, I would come home and say, I know I got 100% on my test. I didn't always get 100%, but in the meantime, I was happy. And what's very good about that is you tend to make the people around you happy too. And then I had the good fortune to meet this wonderful, wonderful man, Saul. And we had 64 years of the most wonderful, joyous marriage you could imagine. And I think a lot of the joy came from the fact that we always would be looking at the good thing. We're going to do this that's good, and this that's good. And if something was not so good, so it's just, we'll pass it by. So you do have a little bit of unhappiness like that. But I know, for example, many times I'll come in, there's a pessimist in the room, and I'll come in with this joyous tale, isn't it wonderful, such and such thing happened? And they'll give me some kind of a remark to break it down. I said, why are you bursting my balloon? See, but in the meantime, I do feel sorry for people who can't find joy, and they should put every effort in looking for it, because take it from me, it's good. Now, my darling husband died 9 years ago. So we had been married a little over 64 years. Well, when it came to my 65th anniversary, I woke up that morning and I said to myself, Pearl, are you going to cry because Saul's not here? Or are you going to be thankful that you had him for 64 years? And I decided I'm going to be thankful. And that's the way I've been all the time. And my sister is a darling, wonderful woman, but she was always pessimistic. And I'd always say, Harriet, why don't you look at the good side? Look at you have wonderful children, wonderful grandchildren, and in fact, wonderful great-grandchildren. But she used to say, the reason that I don't is because I'm afraid I'll be disappointed. So I don't look forward to it being real good, because if it isn't, I'll feel bad. So I said, but isn't it better to feel good in advance? So if it'll be good, you've felt good all the time. And if it'll be bad, you have time to feel bad when it happens, instead of in advance. I never had grandchildren, but I do, my sister's grandchildren are almost like mine. And I enjoy them, so much. And I don't ever think of the fact that I don't have grandchildren as a bad thing, because I feel God blessed me with so many other good things that I don't think of that. And then I do have a wonderful, wonderful daughter-in-law. I was blessed with her, whereas some people don't have that good fortune. So I never look at. One time I came on a ship, and a lady said to me, "Oh, she had been on the segment before, and she says, 'Oh, I wish someone had warned you so that you wouldn't come on the ship.'" And she started to enumerate everything that was bad on the ship. And I know that a lot of the things she enumerated couldn't have been possible. So after she spoke to me for a little while, I left her. I ran to my cabin. I said to my husband, "I just met a lady, and I took a good look at her because I want to be certain that I never speak to her again."
It's a big ship. You have to avoid her.
Right, to try to avoid her. But what people also don't realize, if I remember there's a lady who moved into my town when I lived in Kinston. And I used to go to visit her because she was a newcomer. I figured I'd make her feel welcome. And whenever I'd visit her, she would tell me that nobody visits her. And then after I left, I said to myself, I know why no one visits her. Because she's such a downer. When she'd always tell me about everything that was bad. And if it wasn't bad yet, she would tell you how it's going to be bad. So that's what people should realize. If you want to have friends, you don't want to make them feel sad. You want to make them feel happy. So that when they think, oh, let me go to visit so-and-so because I'll have a good time. But if they feel they're going to go visit the person and they're going to have a sad time, then they won't want to come back. And that person will become sadder because no one will want to visit with them. So make yourself available to be pleasant and think of good things. And when people come visit you, they'll want to continue. And the more people visit you, the happier you'll be.
It's good advice.
Let's see what else.
Do you want to share with our Joy Fuelers how old you are?
I'm 95 years young.
Woohoo! The most youthful 95 I have ever known.
and the thing is, I think the reason I am forever young is I don't think of the fact that I'm 95. I remember when I was chairman of different charities, when I must have been about 80 at the time, and I would call someone and ask them to come and join me. So one lady said to me, "Oh, you know, Pearl, when you get older, it's harder." She was 15 years younger than I. I said, "To whom are you speaking?" See, and therefore, in other words, I never think, well, I can't do it because I'm too old. I just go ahead and do it. Now, I didn't ride a bicycle when I was 15, and I still don't ride a bicycle. But I do ride a stationary bicycle, and I still do every morning for 15 minutes. And then in the afternoon, I take a walk. I can't walk quickly, but I walk slowly. But I still walk my 30 minutes slowly. In other words, don't ever belittle what you could do. See, or else many times I hear people say, "Oh, I can't do that," or "I can't cook that," or "when I do it, it's not so good." Don't feel that way. Because many people who have said that to me, they'll cook something that's super delicious, and they'll start to tell me what's wrong with it. I said, I'm not interested in what's wrong with it, what you think is wrong with it. I think it's good. And that's it. If you sort of veer in that direction, to think of things being good and nice, and you'll be happy. But if you'll veer toward the side where, oh, I don't think that will come out well, it won't come out well, because you won't make it come out well. So much has to do with your own opinions and your own thoughts.
And your focus.
Yes.
You're making me think of what you're focusing on. If you're focusing on looking for what is bad about it,
If
then
you're focusing for failure, you definitely will not have success.
Yeah.
But if you aim for success, sometimes you might have failure. So maybe 1 out of 10. I've been on many times when I go on a ship, again, because I've gone on many cruises, I notice that it could be the most luxurious ship, and the food and the entertainment and everything is just super wonderful. And maybe somewhere along the way, there's one little thing that might not be good. So there were certain people on that ship, invariably, they would be the ones who would mention to me about that one thing that's not good. And I used to feel so sorry for them, because they'll never be happy, because they can't enjoy the 9 things that are good while they're worrying for the one thing that's not so good.
What do you think people can do if say there's somebody who's really struggling and they're recognizing that there isn't a lot of joy in their life, and they have the patterns of those thoughts of where they're still seeing the things that are not good in their life? What is something that somebody could do to try to shift that, their way of thinking? How can they?
If you could possibly, but just, I know when you're down and things are very bad for you and it looks like there's no hope, try to think of other people. If you try to think of other people, maybe I could go help so-and-so. Now, while you're helping this person and trying her to feel better, you will start feeling better, knowing you've done something good. I realize there are some people's lives that are so sad and unhappy, but the only thing I could think of is try to say, I'm so miserable, what can I do to make myself feel better? And I think one of the easiest ways is to go to someone who's real optimistic. Or if you see someone is in as bad trouble as you, say, well, maybe I'll go and help her. Maybe it'll help me while I help her. In other words, try to get out of the misery you're in. And I know sometimes you can't. Yeah, sometimes you have a very nasty husband, or he's an alcoholic or something. It's very, very sad. But of course, it's harder for you to get out than for other people. But try to think of, what could I do to make myself happier? One of the things might be to get rid of that alcoholic husband.
Yeah.
If you could.
It's not an easy thing, but...
Yeah.
That's a wonderful suggestion. To, if you're not able to feel good right now, doing something for somebody else that you know would be good is going to help them.
Yeah.
And the reward is not only in helping them, but how it will make you feel. Because you'll feel like, instead of feeling like I'm not good at anything, or I'm, whatever, the adjectives are that we remind ourselves or tell ourselves or repeat in ourselves, you kind of change that pattern by doing something outside of your comfort zone for somebody else.
Right. That reminds me, I used to kid, I always did a lot of charitable work and tried to always help people. And then I always used to say, well, don't thank me for that. I'm just being selfish. It makes me so happy to help someone that's why I do it. See?
Yeah.
So that's in that line.
Yeah, that's good. When we met, you told me something your husband always said to you, about never worrying in advance, which I loved, and wondered if you could share with our listeners where that came from and
well,
how
actually, it started with when I first got married. I started to cook. I was having company. I would always worry the cake didn't rise enough, or there's not enough salt in the meat, and this won't taste good. And then it turned out that it was good. It tasted very good. So my husband always used to show that as an example to me. He used to say, see, sweetheart, you were so worried that it wouldn't be good, and it is good. So I would advise you, don't worry in advance. If it isn't good, you'll worry later. So now that happened 70 years ago, 7-0. And it really, really had helped me all my life. Whenever something happens, or I think is going to happen, for example, I'm going to have a heart valve replaced December 2nd, which is just 2 weeks from today. And ordinarily, I know I would be sort of a little frantic, knowing they're going to work on my heart. But I keep thinking of those words, Pearl, don't worry in advance. You'll see, you once had a hysterectomy, and everything turned out well, and everything's going to be good. And that's really helping me in advance of the operation. So I really feel that I'm not as sad about it as someone else might be, because I keep saying to myself, don't worry in advance. If the doctors recommended it, then they know what they're doing. And apparently, the people live. Otherwise, they wouldn't suggest you do it. So I'm hoping to live.
Yes, absolutely.
Besides, I'm 95, but I'm not just existing. See, I'm living. I'm going about doing things as I did 10 years ago. So that's a big difference, because I know I had a sister-in-law who she kept saying she wishes she would go to sleep and not wake up. But I could understand, because she didn't do anything. She would just sit all day and just eat a little bit of that she ate 3 times a day. She had no life. She was just existing. Her heart was beating. See, but I always used to say to her, why don't you get up and go? She was also in her 90s, but she didn't do anything. So I could understand how she felt. But I visit my relatives. I go visit the sick people. Or if I feel my neighbor is lonesome, I go and, in other words, I think of doing something for someone else. So I don't have time to feel sorry for myself, which, thank God, I don't think I have anything to feel sorry for, except that I need this operation. But I'm hoping everything will be well. These doctors did 3 of the similar operation last week, and they said 3 days later the people walked out of the hospital. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's what's going to happen.
Yes,
absolutely.
I remember when my husband had to go to the army, to the Second World War, and we had just gotten married, and we just bought this little factory in North Carolina. And I said, you know, honey, I think maybe I could run the factory while you're gone. Now, I wasn't working there at all, but I went in before he left, and I sort of took over. He explained different things to me, and he was gone for 3 years. And I ran the factory for 3 years until he came home, and then I walked out. See, and then
You moved here too. I
moved from another thing. When we got married, we moved from New York City to a little town in North Carolina, and everyone said, "Oh, how are you going to make the change? And you'll probably be so lonesome, and you can't go to the theater." But we didn't. My husband and I were just happy to be together, and it really didn't matter if I was in a small town or in a big city. And that's because you have to be the kind of person to be satisfied with what you have. Now, I realize there's some people who don't have anything, and so they have to try to still pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Just don't ever let the depression get a hold of you. Always try to think of the good side. think of what could be worse,
Yeah.
and then you'll be better off.
And when you were running the business, you did that for 3 years. What was that like? When your husband was away. I mean,
yeah, well, I'll tell you what did help me was I was getting letters, at least one a day, usually 2 a day, from him telling me how wonderful he thinks I am and how much he loves me, and that really kept me going. In fact, right now, I came across an envelope full of the letters that he has sent me. And each night before I go to sleep, I look forward to it and I open it and I read it. And it brings me so much pleasure. See, now that's an example. I'm trying to think of how I can make myself happier.
Yeah.
And I do that every night. And it's so nice, and not only that, it brings me back to those days. See, and so it gives me good thoughts before I go to sleep. It is hard when you're just sitting and talking to give you all the examples, of what I have done. But one thing I have done a lot in my life is when I know that people are housebound, or they make themselves housebound, I would go visit. And I'd cheer them up and think, I'd walk in with a jolly hello and cheer them up, and that made me feel good. And I hope it made them feel good too.
When you said that they're housebound or that they make themselves housebound, what do you mean by that?
With some people, if they, with a little effort, they could get out.
Yeah.
See, but they're pessimistic. They think, oh no, I better not. Maybe this bad thing will happen, another bad thing will happen, and they stay in the house. Whereas if they would say, gee, I think I'm going to put my coat on and go out and go for a walk down the street. But just go out, and you go out in different environments, and you see different people, it just makes you feel better.
Just taking a walk around the block. Yeah. You had once told me about, we were talking about joy, and you were talking about your sister and how we have different set points for joy. Some people, you were talking about how you think people are born differently. Can you share that a little bit?
I do think that something is in your genes. For this reason, I was a middle child, and people many times say, middle children are not so happy. But my sister, I had a sister and a brother, and my sister was beautiful, and my brother was adorable. He was absolutely, I was in the middle. And I wasn't anywhere as good looking as my sister. So it surprises me that why would I have so much confidence? I mean, when I was a child, when I was 12 years old, I remember I had friends. When that time, when you went to the movies, it cost 10 cents. And a couple of my friends never had the 10 cents. Not because they didn't have it. One of them was an orphan and lived with her grandmother. And every aunt and uncle would come and give her 10 cents or 15 cents. But when we'd go to the movies, she never had it. Well, I think I was 12 or 13 years old when that girl and another girl, every time she got a little money like that, I took an envelope and put their names on the envelope. And I would save the money for them. And then, whenever we wanted to go to the movies, they had the money. See, so I'm wondering what would make me be a leader like that, and then I would be president of the group, of the clubs, and things like that. Or I heard once one mother said, if Pearl goes, then I'll let Sylvia go. If I would go, then she knew I would take care of them. And I was only 14 or 15 years old. So I really feel that we must be born with certain instincts to do things, like that. And the same thing with the optimism. I really feel, well, I guess I was also blessed, with intelligence. And I thank God for that every day. because, but I always used to be thankful. As someone once said to me recently, "Aren't you proud of the way you were acting?" I said, "No, I'm not proud, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I can do what I do." I'm talking about physically now, because I'm 95 years old, but I walk by myself. I don't have a walker, and I take care of myself at home. And if I have to dust some furniture, I dust some furniture. I just do things. I never think that I'm 95 and I'm too old to do that.
It's a different philosophy.
I know that I always used to bake lemon meringue pie for my nephews and nieces. Well, where I live now in a senior citizen village, I have my meals with the arrangement. So I don't bake much or cook much. But when I went home for the Jewish New Year, when I say home, I went back to the town where I was living, and my nephew loved my lemon meringue pie. So I made a lemon meringue pie, and I brought it to him. So don't say, I always used to say to my son, "Can't is a quitter." I say, never say I can't. First figure out, how can I to do it? Mm-hmm. Because I said, if you say I can't, then immediately there's no hope of you doing it. But if you say, let me see if I can, so maybe you won't be able to do it every time, but you'll be able to do it a lot of the times. Mm. But if you say can't, you don't have a chance of ever doing it.
Oh, that's beautiful, because the words that we assign activate what's going to happen. You know, the words we use, it sets us up for, more than likely, for the thing that we want or we don't want.
Right. Exactly. When my son went to camp, he was about 9 or 10 years old. And I said to him, there's one thing that I'm asking you before you go. Don't follow mob psychology. I said it is mob psychology, but don't follow the mob. I said, if someone says, let's do such and such, I ask you just one more thing. Think. Stop and think. Is it right? Should I do it? I said, because I know we've taught you, if you think about it, you will not do the wrong thing. But if a little boy comes over to you and says, let's go do so-and-so, and you say, okay, and it might be wrong. And you might think it's wrong, but you're not thinking. You're not thinking. You're just following the mob. So I remember he was gone for 30 days, and I'd send him a postcard every day. You know, in the years when there was a 1 penny postcard, used to send him a postcard every day. And every single...
Was he at camp?
He was at camp. And every single day, I would print THINK. Think, please think. And I knew if he would think that he wouldn't do the wrong thing. Thank goodness he did.
That's wonderful. I look forward to meeting your son. I imagine briefly once, but...
Yeah, he's a good person. To give you an idea about thinking of other people, he was going around campaigning before the election from door to door. And he went day after day for weeks and weeks. And one of the doors he knocked on, a young woman was there with a 3-year-old child who had leukemia. And her husband had to work 2 jobs. And, you know, they had a real tough time getting along. So after the election, my son goes to the bank and takes out some money and brings it to this woman. So there's another example. Don't ever give up hope. Somebody like my son might come to your door and help you.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, what a blessing.
She doesn't know who he is. I don't think she knows his name. Oh, I know she doesn't know. I asked him. She doesn't know his name or anything. But he just brought her some money to help her.
Wow.
So don't give up hope.
Yeah.
I think one very important thing is if you are considerate of other people and think of other people, you won't be so busy thinking of your own problems, because you'll be busy thinking of to do something to help other people. Now, don't think for a minute that I don't realize that there's some people in such dire straits that's hard for them. I realize that, but I'm talking about as an overall picture, that this is what you got to try to do, is think of how could I do something nice for somebody else. And you'll stop worrying about the little things, if there are little things.
It's beautiful. Can you think of some times in your life where joy was missing for you and how you reclaimed it, or times that you were right to not have joy and,
My mother died when I was 14. And my dad I lived in New York, and my dad had to go from Monday to Friday. He would go to Pennsylvania to work. So then I was left, and my sister was 19, and my brother was 9. So my sister was 19, she was going to college, and she had boyfriends, so I was home with my little brother a lot. In fact, to this day, I confuse it. When I call my son's name and my brother, I always call them, I don't always call them the wrong name, but a lot of time. And I feel it's strictly psychological. But I remember when my mother died that I felt so horrible, because I was the kind of child who would always come home from school and tell my mother everything that happened. And now she wasn't there for me to tell. So I know, after all, I was 14 years old, I was a child. But gradually, my dad hired someone to take care of do housekeeping and cook for us, and take care of us. But it was mighty sad. And also, the day my husband left for the Army, so I figured I didn't know if he's going to come back. I'd only been married 1 year.
In a new place in North Carolina, and a new business.
Right. So, I mean, that was those 2 days. I mean, when my mother died and when my husband went to the Army, were really, I think, the 2 saddest days of my life. I happened to have a wonderful, wonderful father. He went overboard to give us things more than he would have if my mother was living, just so that we should feel good. So I was very fortunate that way. I really was. But then, through my life, I guess I've always been the kind that I look at the good stuff. I always say, oh, let's forget that. We'll think, look at how good it's out. The sun is shining outside today. Yeah. Let's go for a walk. See? So I guess I'm very fortunate, and I try my best to get other people to do the same thing so that they should be happy too. And that they should have joy in their lives. Even with your children, try to think, some children might not be as bright as other children. But thank God you have a child, and sort of try to give him whatever that you can to make him be happier and do better. And don't, one of all things in the world, do not belittle your child. Don't ever belittle your child. Always, I remember saying to my niece once, she was a very pretty girl. She was about 20 years old. I said, there's one thing. If you go out with a fellow for a while, and he stops going with you, and you like him, just say to yourself, he couldn't be too bright if he didn't see what a wonderful girl I am. And really, I used to think about myself, I wasn't pretty, see, but I was always considered smart. But I always used to say, if I went out with a fellow, if you're too stupid to see how wonderful I am, I mean, I wasn't wonderful, But I used to think that way. And because I knew that once I got married, that I had the ability to make my husband very happy. I remember we were married in September, and we had moved from New York to North Carolina. We were married in September, and this was Thanksgiving. So all of a sudden my husband says, I'm going to write a letter to my parents. He said, if I was unhappy, they would know about it. But I want to write and tell them how happy I am. And he did. And his parents were so delighted, to receive the letter. But I mean, confidence. Have confidence in yourself. Because you can do it. And if you can't, learn how to do it and do it. And make yourself feel better.
I think it's really interesting and important what you said about being grateful and having gratitude. I think that's a really important message for us to consider if we are looking to activate greater joy in our life, being grateful for whatever is.
Yeah.
Where even for the things like that would be perceived as a negative thing, or that, like you said, things can be worse. But to have gratitude for what is, and for other things that are present in our life, people and friends, or if we don't have friends, the possibility to make friends by being a friend.
Yes.
But it does take action. It's not just...
You have to be active,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And try to help yourself. In fact, I know I have a certain relative. She lives in New York. She has enough money to do anything that she wants. And I feel sorry for her because she is never happy. Why? If she gets 3 houses, she wants 4. If she gets 1 coat, she wants 2. Whatever she has, whereas someone else would be so delighted and thankful that they have it. She's always used to tell me about, oh, so-and-so has this, and I'd love to have that. So I used to think, and I tried to change her, but I saw she was not the kind of person I could change. I used to think, I feel so sorry for you. You have everything that God could possibly give a human being, and you're not happy. Whereas some people who have nothing, see, yeah. and they really have reason to be unhappy. But so I used to really, I feel sorry for people like that. They're never satisfied with what they have. And she was always like that. Always. So it's really a gift. And you've got to create your own gift by making it like that for yourself. Think of the good. Don't think of the bad. And if you have no good, see what you could do to help someone else, to make their lives better, and that will make you feel better. And I hope to God that nobody gets into a real bad situation where it's hard to dig yourself out of. I realize there are a lot of people like that. But whatever your situation is, you must try to look at how you can make it better. As I said, I printed out the word can't, C-A-N''T, in big letters. And I said, this is one thing I said to my son, I don't want you to say can't. Well, of course, I play bridge. So if someone tells me I can't play bridge, I understand. They're right. A lot of people can't play bridge. But that's not an important thing in your life. If you can't play bridge, you play stickball. I remember one thing. When I lived in New York and I was a little girl, we lived on a street that was just one street long. When you got to either side corner, you had to turn. So all the children used to come to that street, and we used to play, you call it stickball, it's like baseball, And then the 2 best boys would choose the teams. It'd be one team against another. And I was always chosen last. because I was not good at athletics. See, but that didn't make me feel bad because I knew it was true. I wasn't good at it, and I couldn't do it. But I didn't say, oh, I'm going to be off the team because I'm last. I went on even though I was last. And I remember as though today I was always last because I was that good at sports. See? And I remember I went bowling. When I went bowling, I was not good at all when I went bowling. I could do a very straight line. So I would take the ball and throw it, and it would go straight down, but it was so slow that it would hit one pin and maybe another pin and fall over or three. But we used to go couples at night, to do that. I still had a wonderful time. I used to laugh at the fact that I can't do it well. See, I remember once in Temple, I went up at a certain point in the service. I went up and I had to do something, and the string just wasn't long enough to tie. I had to tie it around. Instead of getting desperate, I started to laugh. I said, oh my goodness, I can't close this. See, but to think of it in front of it, not the bad part of it. And I know, maybe it's silly, but it makes my life good.
No, maybe if it is silly, it's good silly. Silly's good. Because what's the opposite, The opposite is frustration and being upset and disappointed.
Right, exactly.
Oh. Wow. Pearl, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share? It's been a delightful conversation.
I came to the place where I live now. It's a senior citizen place. Dinner is served in a dining room here. And people a lot of times invite you to join them for dinner. So when I get there now, there's some people, they might like to be with you, but they just the type, they don't think of inviting you. So after I went to dinner a couple of times by myself. And then I called people that I figured that I didn't know if I'd like them or they'd like me, but I figured they seemed to be the kind of people I could call. So I called them and said, would you like to join me for dinner? And there I was, sitting and having a nice evening, and they had a nice evening. Then later they called me. But I didn't sit around for months and say, oh, they're supposed to invite me first. So if I waited for them to invite me first, then I was sitting alone, and not enjoying myself. I wouldn't say I was miserable or anything, because I used to take along something to read, But I didn't wait for them to ask me. If people didn't ask me, I asked them. So in other words, I helped myself.
Yes.
My dad always used to say, when someone would just say, so-and-so successful, my dad always used to say, you have to help the success. And that's what I was doing. See, I was helping myself because I would invite the people, would you like to join me? Then I would call another person and another person. And after a while now, they all call me. See, and they say, oh, we love to be with Pearl because we're always having a good time and laughing. See, in other words, if you're the kind of person who's pessimistic, they don't want to be with you, so you'll sit at home and you'll be more miserable. So reach out and try to be with other people and don't stop. In other words, I don't get insulted, with little things. If you get insulted, you feel bad. So I said, I don't get insulted. I just think of a reason. Well, maybe these people have different things in their mind and they're busy and things like that. Now, what I will say is this. Suppose I invited a person a couple of times and they never invited me, then I wouldn't invite them, not because I'm insulted. I just figured, well, maybe they don't like me. See?
Picking up on a message
Right. So then I'll call somebody else. But the difference is that now, I'm happier living here because of what I did.
Taking the initiative.
Exactly.
Not waiting for it to find you.
Right.
Yeah, wonderful.
I don't get insulted at foolish things. You know, I think she called her more than she called me. I don't care about that. See, because I don't look at the bad side. You know, it's even funny in the family, everybody, kids, when I come back from a vacation, and they'll say, "Did you have a good time?" And then they themselves will say, "Oh, what a foolish question." Of course Pearl had a good time. Because, I mean, it's when I'm on the ship, for example, one time, I was getting off just the day before we got off the ship. In fact, it was a black lady. She came over to me, she says, "Before we get off the ship, I want to tell you that you're the most pleasant person to look at, just. I haven't spoken to you and I haven't been with you. But," she says, "you're always walking around with a smile, and it's so pleasant to see that." See, and therefore, when she thought that, then she had a good feeling.
Yeah.
So,
a smile, just because she was picking up on your smile. That's what happened when I first saw you. That's why I wanted to meet you. I saw you and I thought, wow, I'd love to sit next to that lady. What an amazing lady. You just emit beauty and positivity and kindness.
you know, the funniest thing is, as Becky just told you, when we met, I was supposed to go back via a different city, and then my plane was canceled, and I got on this plane, and it was just really like destiny that we should meet.
Yeah.
And Becky is the sweetest person, and the thing that I love the most is that she's trying to make other people happy. And you know, that's such a wonderful, wonderful trait, to be interested in making other people happy. There are some unfortunately, there are too many selfish people in this world who really they don't care about anybody else. Am I happy? Have I got what I want? And they never give a thought about anyone else. And here's a young lady who just goes around day after day figuring, how could I make lots of people joyful? And that's,
I'm trying.
And I'm hoping that God will bless you, Becky.
Oh, God does bless me.
So that you could be happy all your life.
Oh, thank you.
So, you know, another thing, when you're happy all your life, you're making so many other people happy. And that's a blessing.
Well, I feel that. It's a responsibility.
It's a blessing from heaven.
I'm blessed, but it's...
Now, you're blessed, and the people with whom you meet are blessed. Because you're making them feel better.
Oh. Well, everybody who knows you, Pearl, is blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for that rerouting of the planes and that divine intervention that happened, that we met, that we could have this beautiful moment, and that we could share this with everybody who's listening around the world. And I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure.